program which will be recorded. So this part of the program will be recorded, but we'll have breakout rooms later that will not be shared and will not be recorded. So feel free to share if you feel comfortable sharing in those breakout rooms. I'd like to thank our partners, Mr. James Stukes, Dean Taifa Alexander, Mr. Ellis Goodwin, the president of the Men of Color, as well as the other members of the Men of Color for helping put this event together. And so as far as the format of the event, we'll have obviously the welcoming and my introducing of the panelists. We'll have a roundtable talk for 10-15 minutes where you all will submit questions to me in the chat, or questions that have already been submitted to me in the chat. And I'll ask each panelist, which will allot them about 2 minutes to talk about on each one. Then we'll have 20 minutes for our breakout rooms for all of our attendees to share their own experiences, their opinions, their perspectives with their groups about certain questions they may have with each panelist that they have present. Then we will return to the large group and we'll share any insights or any thoughts that we'd like to within the larger group. And then we'll have a question and answer session with the panelists again, giving each panelist an opportunity to answer each question. Then we'll have some closing remarks. With that aside, I will be introducing our great panelists to you today. So first we have Dr. James Lee. Is he present? I know he was caught up with work.
No, I'm here.
Nice to have you. First we have Dr. James Lee. He's an adult psychiatrist in Greenville, South Carolina, who's currently working at the Springbrook Behavioral Health Center in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. A graduate of Morehouse College and Meharry Medical College, Dr. Lee is also a founding member and the treasurer of the Global Health Psychiatry LLC, a collection of 7 African-American psychiatrists with the goal of educating others on the importance of addressing mental health in our communities. So thank you for being here, Dr. Lee. Next, we have Dr. Vashaun Williams, who is a child and adolescent psychiatrist practicing in Tampa, Florida, a graduate of Florida A&M, FAMU, as well as a Morehouse School of Medicine graduate. Dr. Williams is currently provides psychiatric services for Grace Point Wellness at several locations in the Tampa area. Next, we have Mr. Christopher Briggman, who is a forensic vocational expert and evaluator, a certified rehabilitation counselor, a human resources manager, and a licensed clinical mental health counselor. Mr. Briggman provides expert vocational evaluation, forensic legal testimony, vocational counseling, as well as mental health therapy for individuals and agencies. Following that, we have Mr. Jules Green, who is a graduate of South Carolina State and New Mexico State University. Mr. Green has a master's in social work and is a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed independent social worker with a clinical practice, and a certified clinical trauma professional. And then last but not least, we have Mr. One second, my screen is freezing up. Sorry about that. Last but not least, we have Mr. Terence Wyatt. Terence Wyatt has been working in the medical field since 2013. He's a graduate of Lander University, as well as receiving a bachelor's degree in sociology from Liberty University in Lynchburg. Mr. Wyatt is a professional counselor and is a licensed professional counselor associate according to the South Carolina Board of Counseling requirements. And Mr. Wyatt finished his 2-year requirement to obtain a licensed professional counselor certification in January 2021. So we'll be rooting for you in January. And he is qualified to work with adolescents, teenagers, and adult clients, and is currently employed with the South Carolina Department of Mental Health and Youth Advocate Program. So with that being said, those are our esteemed participants. Going forward, we will have the questions in the Q&A section. And just for the attendees, more information will be sent to you about the panelists in your emails. So I'm looking for the questions that I'll receive. Well, to start us out, I have a personal question of my own before we get into the other questions. I haven't received those yet. But just in 2020 and with events going around, as a young Black man, I find myself looking at the news, looking on Twitter, social media, and almost always seeing someone maybe my age or slightly older than me that looks just like me that is being gunned down or murdered in the streets. And as far as my mental health, it's almost a pain for me to look at these images constantly. And I kind of felt like my life has been belittled as in a sense that I'm just kind of a number. So just for anyone to take this on, how do I or how do we as young men go about addressing social media and all these outlets that just so blatantly advertise these things that happen to us on a almost daily basis?
Well, I'll jump in and answer that one, or at least attempt to answer it initially. Um, your generation is a little bit different than mine in that we have grown to become accustomed to social media. We can kind of cut it on, cut it off is, easier than those that are younger than us, because you guys, it's almost inbred in your DNA. But I say that to say that you have to realize that you have to take a little self-preservation sometime and realize that you have to step away. And when things get painful, when things get difficult, that you have to maybe step aside and turn those feeds off sometime. And that's more than just social media. That can even be the news. Around the time of George Floyd, um, I said that George Floyd was murdered. It was Memorial Day weekend. I said that I wasn't going to look at anything because it was becoming overwhelming for me to see these images and to have those thoughts and this piled on top of all the things that we had dealt with within the last few years, not to mention the last few decades. Um, Funny part about it is my parents came in town, and every time I turned around, they wanted to have the TV on CNN or one of the TVs on CNN in the main part of the house. So that kind of got thrown to the wayside. But I say that to say that you have to realize that you have to kind of back away sometimes. And when you start feeling like that, it's okay to turn things off. It's
Mm.
okay to say that I don't need to look at this feed or I don't need to follow this for give yourself some time and to know that you can it's okay to feel that way. You can step away sometime.
And I'll add that I think it's absolutely traumatizing. It's a traumatic experience that we have. It's like a bad dream that many people that look like us have been experiencing for many, many, many years. And to think, how uncomfortable it is for us to experience it now, looking at it on television, looking at it through social media, looking at it being played over and over again. And that only pales in comparison to how our grandparents and great grandparents and great great grandparents experienced, because they saw it face to face, on a daily basis. They saw that and they were dealing with that and having to try to be able to wrap their minds about what this meant to them and how it made them feel and how it made you feel that there was not a sense of, that a black man's life mattered and there wasn't a significant quality that was associated with the black man's life. So I do think that it's like a bad dream. It's like a nightmare because these people mirror us. It's when we look in the mirror, it's what we see. The people of our same complexion, the people sometimes are very in our same age range. We associate it with a brother, a friend, a father, or uncle, or whatnot, and son in some cases. So it is very important as we work with people that deal with post-traumatic stress symptoms. We help them to try to be able to identify some of those triggers and different things that may bring about some of those very strong emotional responses. So I do agree it's important to sort of diversify, how you approach that. I mean, I think you have to balance yourself, and balance is a good thing in life, period, when dealing with just sort of your mental health and overall dealing with life. But trying to make sure you remain informed and engaged and attentive to what's going on. So you got your head onto what's going on and your third eye is not blind. But you also want to balance and deviate away from that if you need to. And it's critical not to be overly exposed to images that are and subject matter that repetitively traumatize you. So it's okay to take some time away. It's okay to be able to deviate your attention in another direction as best you can. Again, it is much more challenging, as Dr. Lee a mention because, you know, obviously when we grew up, you know, we had three main channels. It was ABC, NBC, and CBS. And the TV went off at like 12 or 1 o'clock, and it didn't come back on until 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. So we had three main channels, and they only showed news at certain times. Now, in a day and age with information all the time, it's very difficult not to be exposed to it. So in your world, I think it's important to, like we said, self-preservation, and make sure that you're informed, but at the same time, taking that critical time away if you begin to feel overwhelmed emotionally.
Okay, just kind of piggybacking off that question for Mr. Green, how can men of color just maintain a stable mindset during the current climate that we're in?
I think that we have to have ritual. We have to have routine. You have to have something that ties you to something purposeful, something meaningful, and something fun. You know, in the midst of all of the trauma that we're observing and experiencing vicariously, I think that we forget that life really revolves around more than just the trauma, the brutality, the racism. We're seeing that every day. So the gentleman who just spoke before me, you know, they're both spot on in that it is re-traumatizing. It changes our actual brains. So we have to be willing to set a boundary and counteract that with something that's going to be positive. So I'm going to ask you, for example, since you're a little bit younger than us, what is something that you enjoy that's fun and helps you feel disconnected from the pain of the trauma that you're experiencing?
I think for me, it would be playing Call of Duty or my PS4, things like that, playing pickup basketball, just, you know, hanging out with friends and trying to disconnect from my phone or the internet.
Right. So I don't know about the Call of Duty. That might be re-traumatizing on a different day. But overall, what you listed in terms of hanging out, spending time with friends, playing ball, those are all what we call protective factors against, you know, trauma and painful experiences, as opposed to immersing yourself. So I think having a ritual, having a routine, having things that are set in your schedule that you can look forward to, because we don't look forward to these horrific images. We don't look forward to seeing our reflections hurt and abused. We don't look forward to that. But I think that we've been conditioned to believe that we owe our fallen soldiers those looks, you know, on the feeds. But what I try to communicate to my brothers and sisters that I work with is that there is no guilt, there is no shame if you choose to turn the TV off, if you choose to tribute them by doing something positive with your Black or life of color. So.
Next question for Mr. Briggman, kind of pivoting. What is your take on men's vulnerabilities being weaponized against them? So for my instance, I take this question as, you see a man cry and, oh, he's weak. You see a man express any negative emotion or any emotion outside of his character, and you kind of weaponize that. Or, you know, any other vulnerabilities a man might have.
Sure. I'd first like to say that I really appreciate Mr. Green, Dr. Williams, and Dr. Lee for mentioning those comments earlier. Those were spot on. I use those references a lot, so thank you for that. In regards to your question, Mr. Carter or Jalen?
Yeah, so you can call me Jalen. I'm 21, so I'm not used to Mr. Carter. That's my dad.
I believe that vulnerabilities, if they are personally realized, are some of our greatest strengths. Our vulnerabilities allow us to acknowledge our shortcomings and improve upon them, you know, in various instances where we may not have control of the outcome. So in my practice and what I do with my clients is whenever they mention things or situations where they do feel vulnerable or their family members are not on board with them seeking mental health, I champion my clients. I encourage them, and I help them to understand that their personality, their mental status is just like working out. You've got to strengthen that muscle to ward against different types of issues that we're not prepared for. For instance, none of us were prepared for COVID. None of us are prepared for any of these riots, any of the cultural backlash that are happening. But if you're putting yourself in a position to be accepting of obtaining a therapeutic reach or reaching out for therapy, or encouraging somebody else to do so, that's going to help to strengthen you and our culture. So I think that would address a lot of the I guess misconceptions that seeking mental health is a vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can add just a little something to that, Mr. Carter, I think that communication is vitally important. It's one of the most important things that helps human beings interact accordingly and be productive. Communication is key. So as far as vulnerabilities are concerned, sometimes individuals may feel like they're on an island, they're alone when they're experiencing some of those things. We're all human beings. As Black men, as men of color, period, we're human. So we have concerns, we have fears, we have worries, we have things that make us feel different things emotionally. So having a safe place for communication, being able to identify the commonalities that we experience is very important. So individuals who have an opportunity to speak with each other, speak with other people, to whether you have forums or people have barbershop talks, other people have different talks, different Zoom meetings and whatnot, to talk about how we're feeling and what we're going through with some of the commonalities, because we're at different stages of development in the age cycle, but people experience a lot of similar things, being Black and being as a male in this country, in this world that we live in. So the communication is very key. And the more we can communicate and have open dialogue, the less we feel isolated, alone, misunderstood, ashamed, and muted. And then you can talk about some of those things that we consider to be vulnerabilities and realize that you're not going through it alone. And then talk about very productive ways to try to be able to deal with some of those things, because a lot of people, think they're frightened of the idea of talking about mental health and talking about emotions and whatnot. So communication is key, and identifying with somebody who also has a similarity makes you feel less isolated. And one of the most important things that we do not get and we're not taught, unfortunately, is, and I try to encourage all people, whether I'm dealing with kids or adults, is to develop an emotional vocabulary. Right. Develop the words that go along with how you feel. And that is not something that we're taught and we get enough of. I try to do with my family, my kids growing up, simply by just having one of those big feeling charts that you put on your refrigerator, and every night talking about how we feel and why we feel a certain way. Doing that at a very early age with people that you can influence and people in your family on a regular basis allows you to be able to associate emotions and words and be able to communicate about how you feel, which I think is very effective and can help to address some of those vulnerabilities as well.
Appreciate that. I know a part of growing up and becoming a man, I guess you could say, is just having, not understanding the certain feelings that I have and how to express those feelings. So I appreciate that. That's my next. Go ahead.
I want to add a bit to those wonderful comments about those brothers. There's this elephant in the room, and we call it toxic masculinity now, right? We didn't have a name for it 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we didn't have a real name for it. And I think it's so key that we do develop emotional vocabulary, but that vocabulary has to be shared within context where it's going to be received and accepted. And I think that as brothers, we can do a much better job at of being receptive to, different types of, Black men and masculinity, and understanding that, hey, this brother may not be from the hood. This brother may be from, the suburbs. And the way that he comports himself may be quite different than the way that I comport myself if I'm from a more quote unquote urban area. But I think that a lot of toxic masculinity that has been a part of our condition has eroded our sensitivity as Black men. Right. And I think, to the degree that it's made relationships with Black women, less effective. Our communication with other brothers has, kind of been piecemeal rather than open and as genuine as we have the ability to be. So I think that we have to be willing to be allies when we're in the ranks of other brothers who would seek to perpetuate, the masculinity stereotypes that really oppress our feelings and our ability to communicate. We have to be willing to do that.
I want to add a little bit to what everybody is saying. As you grow up as a child, the first thing you hear, if you're a young man, big boys don't cry.
That's right.
Suck it up. Big boys don't cry. Big boys don't do this. And the sad thing with that is it teaches you, or it formulates your mind to say, okay, I can't get into my feelings. Because if I get into my feelings, my daddy or my uncle or my grandfather or my cousins, they either gonna laugh at me, they're gonna penalize me. So I've got to put on this persona, or I got to put on this mask that I'm something that I'm really not. And the sad thing is, young men grow up to be men, they still got the mask on. And pain hit them, because pain is real, and pain can teach you something if you gravitate to it. But if you're running from it, if you're hesitant of it because you was taught at a young age, big boys don't cry. Big boys do more than cry. They get mad, they end up hurting people, they end up hurting themselves, and their life is messed up. And then you wonder, you like, well, what went wrong with them? They was trained so well, they was taught. They never got in touch with their feelings. I mean, and now in the culture that we living in, it's almost in your face. You can't deny it unless you just live in a bubble and say this is not happening. I mean, our young men, we gotta let them know, hey, it's okay to cry, man. It's okay. Now you can't do it with everybody because some people are gonna give you that stare and that look. But if you find someone that genuinely care about you and want to support you, I mean, I had a client just yesterday. He shared something with me, shared that he had been sexually molested as a child, and he spent 30 minutes, and he said it. He said, man, I don't want to cry. I don't want to cry. And I was like, dude, this is confidential. I'm not going to think of you as less of a man if you cry. And it's like I had to give him permission to cry. And when I said that, man, he bawled. And I said, man, and I told him, I said, you're your strongest right now by letting this stuff out and working through your narrative and working through your truth. So I heard it growing up, and I'm quite sure anyone that is in my age group know that was taught to us. Big boys don't cry.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of feeds into my next question for you, Mr. Wyatt, and piggybacking to that, anyone can add. What do you think is misunderstood about mental health care for men? And what do you think some barriers for treatment for men are that want to seek mental health or mental health help? And what do you suggest to men that do or would like to seek therapy?
I think a lot of it too is for African Americans, for Black men, it comes off, and it was a stigma for so long with mental health. I tell my clients all the time, if one of my clients go to their friends and say, hey, I got a toothache, I'm going to the dentist, that's totally acceptable. Or I've been feeling sick lately. I've been having fever. I think my mom is going to take me to the hospital. Yeah, man, go ahead. As soon as you say, I'm depressed, I'm having anxiety, I'm going to see a mental health, you're crazy. What's wrong with you? I mean, they putting the cross up. Why? No, man, don't do that. And it's that stigma that was so rampant in the early 50s and 60s. But now young men are starting to realize I'm hurting. This is really affecting me, and I don't have anybody to talk to. I need help. And not to say that that's a cool thing, because I want to be out of a job, to be honest with you. I want to be where everybody is where they need to be. But to be honest, it's not. So I think the barrier is that fear of coming in and talking to a stranger and bearing your soul. Another dynamic, you might have family members that don't either understand mental health or find it to be, no, you toughen up, get strong. You ain't got no problem. I've had a lot of kids come in, African Americans, say, Mom, I can't even talk to my mom and dad about depression. They look at me, they say I'm lazy, or they say I don't want to do this, or if they have ADHD, okay, well, they say I'm not studying. And they sit there and say, it's not that I'm not studying, I don't understand what I'm studying. I'm struggling. So I think it's that stigma, but is as more things are progressing, more pain is evident. People are getting to the point they're like, I'm tired of being tired. I want some help. I got to bypass what mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and uncle said. I got to go to somebody and get some help with this. And I think if they can get past the barriers, get past what they were taught, I think we'll see more African Americans seeking. I mean, on my caseload right now in South Carolina Department of Mental Health, I have one African American client. That's it, one. And he came in because,
I said, where are you located?
I'm working at Blue Ridge High School up in Griffin.
Where is that?
That's like okay.
Citywide. I mean, well, I don't know where you're located.
Okay, I live in Greenville.
Oh, okay.
Greenville. But I drive to Greer every morning.
I got you. Okay, yeah. That's Greer. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I like what you said specifically. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to say, I think that it's completely different in the private practice world because I have now, when I started my practice 2 years ago, my clients were predominantly white. Now my clients are pushing towards 80% African American, and the referrals come in daily. Okay. So there is a shift, and I think with school-based it's different. But in private practice, it folks are waking up and the calls are coming in.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I would say that all but one of my clients are Black. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, and 40% of my referrals come from family members, mainly the females of the family, the girlfriend, the mother, the wife, who see that there's an issue that they may before have been afraid to address for fear of getting, almost retaliated against. But now I go into my calls with the assumption that the client, the male that I am speaking to may not, interpret the therapy well, but I have not had any type of issues with, implementing different types of therapies or techniques, and they are completely receptive, if not excited, that they actually have a Black male counselor to speak to. So I want to talk about too what Dr. Williams said as far as the communication about emotions, and I think that that's becoming more apparent, especially with the implementation of social media. Different definitions for different types of mental disorders or conditions are being plastered on everybody's phones all day. So when you start to see those symptoms, even if you're not actually sure, it at least comes to your mind that this could be something that's wrong with me. Just like if you were to go to WebMD and check, you got a messed up stomach and it gives you 50 different, ailments. Right. I think people are actually starting to realize that mental health is serious and it's real. Mm-hmm. And it's starting to turn, but we still have a long way to go.
Right.
Yeah. With that being said, I think that we're ready to get into our breakout rooms to get some one-on-one, get some more of this discussion going. I mean, I think it's going great so far. I mean, I'm having a good time. Y'all having a good time.
Oh, but, yeah, I am, man.
Yes.
If we're ready to go to the breakout rooms, I'm ready.
So, hi, everyone. I didn't get to introduce myself in the beginning. I'm T.R. Roney, one of the mental health counselors at Wofford. So for the sake of time, we're going to go straight into the Q&A. We want to be respectful of our panelists' time. And so, Jalen, whenever you're ready to kind of start with those questions, we can go ahead.
All right. So if anyone has a question that they'd like to ask or hasn't been asked so far, you can put that in the chat and I'll read them out.
Hey, quick question. If we were in the middle of answering a question, can we pick up right there in our breakout rooms, all of the panelists? If anyone was in the middle of answering a question, maybe they can have the individual pose the question and then we finish responding to it.
I don't see any problem with that.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. One of the gentlemen asked me, how can tell when support has transitioned to enabling behaviors, pretty much. And this, hey, brother Maquilla, you want to ask your question again? Maybe unmute that question.
Yeah, it was pretty much talking about how do you know when you've gone either too far in trying to help someone and you're now enabling them, but also when do you know that you're being too tough on them and not recognizing that they have a real problem, because you don't want to diagnose, because that's not your job as a friend, but at the same time you don't want to just be like an a-hole and think that they're okay and tell them they're okay if they're not okay.
And so what I was mentioning to you is that I think that, you know, first kind of observe people's patterns. If it's typical for a person to kind of need a lot more of encouragement over a couple of weeks, then that just may be their pattern. It may not be the healthiest pattern, but then if you see that it's going 3 weeks, it's going 4 weeks, then it sounds as though something clinical is occurring. And so within that dynamic, it would be supportive of you as a friend who cares about this person to reach out to this person's family, friends, or on campus, support in order to address it so it doesn't just stay on your shoulders, because that could cause a lot of problems between you and your friend, because there's confidentiality, but again, like you said, you're not a clinician, so you're not quite breaking someone's confidence if you think this person is in a situation where they're so depressed that they're immobilized. People are going to notice that at some point anyway. So would you feel comfortable, talking to student support services or to a family or member or a friend of this person? Would you feel comfortable doing that?
I guess usually I would just call their parents if it got too far, but typically I'm the type of person who believes you can fix it and we can get through this, or I was that type of person, and I'm trying to learn more about this type of stuff.
So you can
Go ahead. Green.
I was just going to say that I don't think that we can have too much support when we're, severely depressed, like what you described. And again, it's your friend's choice. But one of the things that Maquilla said in the chat room, this is the comic relief. He said he has to go to his friend and say, "Get your ass up every day." So, that's your intervention, and it's been helpful to some extent, but it's time to escalate that and get yourself some support, because that can't feel good to have all of that weight on your shoulders, and you're a student with your own responsibilities.
Right. I would like to
take it a step. I would take it a step back and broaden that net even a little bit more, just in general, not because I don't know the specific situation you were talking about, but for any of us who have a friend or a colleague that comes in and says that, I'm having some difficulty, if they're witnessing or able to identify that they're having a problem at that level, then you need to steer them towards someone that can help, because it's not up for us to say, "Oh, well, that's nothing, just deal with it." Right. If they're realizing that they're having a problem with something, whether it's anxiety, depression, OCD, whatever it may be, then steer them toward the professional so the professional can say what remedy is there for this, whether it's counseling, whether it's medication, whether it's non-pharmacological treatments, whatever it may be, but allow them to, like you said, get the help that's needed. It's not for us to say, it's for them to say that they're having a problem and to get the help.
Just in the interest of time and to make sure we get to everyone's questions, I'm going to ask the next question by Isaiah. As men of color facing stigmas which exist within our own communities, what made you all decide to become counselors and work in this field?
I'll share with that question. What made me actually want to get into counseling, I think I was about like 13 or 14 years old. And my grandfather, I was riding in the car with him one day, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. I was sitting on the passenger side, he was driving, and I don't know, I just started talking to him. And we always called him Pop, me and my brother. And I said, Pop, I'm not going to help anybody. I said, when I get older, it's going to be all about me. I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to take care of my interests. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I don't know where I was that day. I don't know why I was feeling like that. But I'll never forget, he looked over at me and he said, son, don't be like that. He said, it's nothing wrong with helping people. It's nothing wrong with having a smile on your face and being kind to people and going an extra mile for people. And he said, promise me something when you get older, that you will go out of your way to be there for somebody and help somebody. And when he was saying this to me, because he was such my role model, and I was like, oh man, I felt like I had did something wrong. But when he said that to me, and I said, okay, and I tell that story because it was shortly after that, maybe about a year or so, he passed away. And so that fueled me, because he was a father figure, because I grew up without my father. So he was a father figure to me, and for him to impress that on me, I carried that. I was just like, man, this is my mission. This is, I'm not going to be selfish, and it's not about me. It's about helping somebody. If it ain't nothing more than just shaking someone's hand or just saying, hey, how you doing today? They might not ever see me again, but I impact their life. If we have 5 minutes of time, I want them to walk away and say, I met Terence Wyatt, and I'm going to tell you something. That was probably the best 5-10 minutes I ever spent in my life. So my grandfather influenced me to always think of other people and just do the best I can. And I mean, I'm not a miracle worker. I can't fix anybody, but I can be there and listen to whoever is willing, whoever's got a story, because all of us here tonight, we got a story. The question is, who's willing to listen?
And also, I want to add to this question. How do you, being in this profession, and you have your own reasons why you got into it, how do you make sure that you're okay? How do you take care of your own mental health? I mean, dealing with other people and hearing other people's plight can be taxing. So how do you make sure that you're okay and that you have time to take care of your own mental?
Yeah,
A lot of naps.
That's a great question. And I think that anyone who takes on the responsibility of listening and trying to help, diagnose and treat and come up with strategies for other people, that can weigh on you yourself. And so I do think it's important for balance. I think it's important for balance, as we talked about before, even in the beginning, we were talking about how you sort of take a step away from the constant repetitiveness of the traumatic things we're seeing. You have to have balance in your life. Find something that you can do that can sort of take you away from there. Definitely take your job very seriously and do it to the very best of your ability while you're doing it and try to be able to help people. But you do have to realize that you have to take care of yourself, whether or not that's doing stuff with your family or traveling or working out or playing a sport or doing something that's very important to you, building something that's important. You have to try to make sure you do those things, and you have to be able to cut it off. You have to be able to cut it off. And I tell you, it's not easy at all by any means. And one interesting fact is that for a certain age range, I don't know the exact range of population, but psychiatrists actually have the highest percentage of suicide of doctors, which is very interesting. And unfortunately, I've lost some that I've known and trained with over time because of a variety of things that have occurred there. So I do think it's important to know that it does not discriminate. Mental health and mental illness does not discriminate for age or profession or race or gender or socioeconomic status or anything of that nature. So I think we just have to be very wise and astute in trying to be able to sort of take steps away and do things that are enjoyable for yourself. Me, I watch football and I travel is what I do. I watch football and I travel, and I have one of the best football teams that I root for, but that's neither here nor there.
I definitely agree with Dr. Williams. I think that one of the ways I discovered that I needed a break was when I did burn out. I worked for the VA for 11 years, counseling veterans, and the things I was hearing on a regular basis were definitely interesting because I finished studying them, but hearing them on a daily basis itself was taxing. And I needed to go into a different field. So I left mental health for a few years and, kind of opened up different doors with the degrees I've gotten. And I think when I decided to come back, I had a new perspective, a fresh face on it, and I could understand that I needed a break. So for me, what I do is I take naps through the day. I make I break my clients up. I often, I'm humorous. I like to joke. I like to, have a good time and, cut up a little bit with, my clients a little bit just to get them eased a little bit. Humor to me is one of the best remedies, but that's kind of what I do.
Okay. Almost kind of like balancing, that's for me, classwork and social life and how to maintain a healthy so I can get through everything. Right. Kind of similar. Mm-hmm. I guess our final question will be from Cecil. How do you not confuse needing help mentally with spiritual exaltation? So as a Christian, he believes that he confuses both often. So where do you, I guess you take this, how you feel it?
I think that we have to align ourselves with spiritual leaders and spiritual tribes that really support holistic health and wellness. Now that's not something that's always been done in our community to the degree that we have it now. I think that there are a lot more entities that really approach faith from a holistic perspective and therefore are more receptive and more welcoming. And I think that if you're a whole person seeking a whole person support experience, you have to be discerning and you have to be willing to set an intention for the type of spiritual tribe that you want to align yourself with. So if you go to a church or, to a faith center and don't feel that you connect to it, it's important for you to be able to continue the journey of finding that because it's not always easy to find, especially, we're talking about South Carolina. And so also be willing to reach out to the, faith-based communities online in order to align yourself with a church home or a spiritual tribe that's going to welcome you in all parts of you.
Well, if that's all we have, I'd like to thank you all, our presenters, for being here and taking all of our questions. I'd like to thank everyone for participating and sharing their own experiences and I guess in a sense kind of being vulnerable, as we talked about earlier. Mental health is something that I've taken seriously, and personally for me, did James, did you have a question?
Oh, I didn't. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, well, mental health is something that I've taken serious and that I've learned in my short time here that is very important. So I'd urge anyone, if they have any certain feelings or feel the need to reach out to anyone to get those people. I'm available on campus as well as other men of color here, and we all have our own organization. So that's part of the reason why we exist. But if Haley or Ms. Worley has anything else to finish up to close us off with.
Thank you again, all of you who've attended and our panelists and the students and any faculty or staff that are here. Those of you who registered online, if you registered early enough, you might have received the panelists' bios, a little form with that. If you have not received it, you can email me and I'd be happy to send you that information if you just want to read a little bit more about our panelists. And of course, if there are any other questions following this program, please let us know, and we would really appreciate your feedback and want to know if you are interested in having more programs like this. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, guys. Y'all take care. Be well.
It was an awesome experience, guys. Thank y'all so much.
Yes, sir.
Do it again. Let's do it again.
Thank you. I just want to say
Guys,
that
take care.
for all the students, and I'm so proud, everybody, so proud of you guys for participating in something like this. This is absolutely a wonderful step in the right direction for this, and continue to do it. And each person represents a group of people. So take this information back and share it so it can be dispersed, and let this be the beginning of something that continues to have this conversation. It's just excellent to see so many of your beautiful Black faces, and being able to sort of come out in this respect and be able to do this type of thing. We're so very proud of you guys. Keep it going.
Yeah.
Here's to that.
Yeah, definitely keep it going. It was a blessing, guys, to meet everybody and talk with everybody. And just remember this, I'll leave you with this. We all impact somebody.
Yes.
Whether you're a counselor, whether you're a teacher, or just a student, somebody's watching you. Somebody's watching your life, and they are checking you out to say, why is this person special? Why is this person in my life? So just keep that in mind. I mean, you might come across somebody and might be 10, 15 minutes, you never see them again, but they walk away and say, man, that man or that woman, they changed my life for the better, and they changed my life forever. So continue being that impact on campus and off campus. But once again, this was an honor for me to be a part of this, and I wish everyone nothing but the best in your professions. And let's just go out here and be the impact that this world needs, because we're in some treacherous times, y'all.
Yes,
Scary,
sir.
treacherous times.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much, guys.
All right. You guys be blessed.
We appreciate that.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.